Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. We are examining the case of a death row inmate from Nashville tonight, and it's in a powerful documentary that's going to debut at the Nashville Film Festival. There is the name of the film, You Don't Know Me. It is about Abu-Ali Abdur'Rahman. And we have with us tonight the filmmaker and the attorney for Abu-Ali. And I want to ask John Kent, the filmmaker, how did you get involved? Did the attorneys come to you and say, hey, can you do something on this? Or you're a filmmaker that hadn't done much on the death penalty. How did you get involved in this?
No, I got involved, it was really by visiting Lionel Barrett and hearing his stories, and then looking him up. We came back and doing a little research on Lionel. You can't research Lionel without Abu's name coming up. And I equate it sort of to stepping in quicksand, the story equivalent of quicksand, because it got very deep very quickly. So for a living, I work with nonprofits and I do advocacy films. So the last thing that I want to do as an independent filmmaker is something that is what I would classify as advocacy, where you're telling a story that is all positive because that's what you're hired to do. So my wife and Lisa and I started looking into this case. And the big question was, how did Lionel Barrett, this wonderful attorney who we've heard all these stories about, and from him, how did he mess up in this case so dramatically? And that's what drove us to go, well, we want to answer this question. So we had not heard of Abu-Ali Abdur'Rahman, wasn't aware of his case, wasn't particularly interested in capital punishment, to be honest. I've been against it philosophically, but I just had other work that to pay attention to. And so I did get in touch with Brad and the team to say, I want to make this documentary. I want to do it independently. And to their credit, to his legal team's credit, they provided me with the information that I needed, and they allowed me to tell the story that we felt like needed to be told, that was the honest story, and let the viewer decide. There's mystery to it, but we wanted the viewer to decide, what they consider to be the truth.
It doesn't come off as you said, as a film that's solely anti-death penalty. I mean, it more comes off as a piece of journalism to me, an examination of this case, which is a fascinating case. And there is the other side on there. You certainly hear from the families of those who died, and you do. It does seem to me like you tried to get both sides, and it wasn't, as you said, just an advocacy piece.
No, and in particular, the 2002 clemency hearing, we have wonderful archival footage where Abu and others are appearing. It was Abu's appearance before. Basically, Governor Sundquist had a parole board type of committee whose job was to consider clemency and then make a recommendation to him. Well, I refer to it as a kangaroo court, because, they clearly were just gunning for Abu. But in doing so, it made for an interesting tension, because, people are, while they may not have been under oath, they're still appearing before a board. And so we have a lot of wonderful footage of exchanges between not only Abu, but others. Even the jurors were somewhat, the committee itself was somewhat even combative with the jurors. And it's hard to watch, and I'm glad I wasn't there that day, but it does make for an interesting tension in a film.
There's a juror who says she thought the defense was for the state. That's how ineffective the counsel was. She said that, right?
Yeah, the thing to me that's mind-boggling is just a citizen who, and Lisa and I talk about this all the time, it's just all the things that went wrong that you would think, well, if a juror is saying, not only that, but the juror says, she was misinformed, she voted twice for life, she didn't, but she was told that one vote would not have made a difference. Well, it absolutely would have made a difference. One vote would have kept him off death row. She said she felt pressured by the other jurors, that she was misinformed, and so she changed her vote. Well, to me, that alone means, well, this case should be, retried or whatever. To me, that questions the validity of the rule. I mean, there's so many things like that. There was one piece of forensic evidence, which was the clothing that Abu wore that night. So if Abu was the perpetrator and doing the stabbing, and he's over Patrick Daniels and he's doing that, how could there be no blood on his clothing? Well, turns out he did have red paint on his clothing from his work at the Baptist Publishing House, but it was not blood. The detective told him it was blood because he thought that. The TBI report comes back and says, no, it was red paint. That one piece of forensic evidence was never brought into trial.
That's crazy.
Even though the very first attorney had it in his file and offered it to Lionel, saying, do you want my file? Lionel never accessed. Yeah, I mean, this stuff to me it becomes just sort of absurd, like that this is not corrected then at future appeals. And that's sort of what, we would come home from making, segments of the film, and we would just be flabbergasted at like, how could this really happen? But it did.
So, Brad, why was the case overturned in Davidson County? Why was there this ruling to, I guess, move it from a death penalty case, and Davidson County, the DA agreed to say life in prison just recently?
Well, the bottom line is because the lead prosecutor, John Zimmerman, who has a long history of misconduct, who engaged in really egregious misconduct in this case, he used race to strike jurors from the jury. And we filed a motion several years ago to reopen his case based upon some new U.S. Supreme Court case law that really advanced the standard for determining whether a case should be set aside because of racial discrimination in jury selection. So we asked the court to reopen the case, and we presented the evidence that John Zimmerman used race in striking jurors from the jury. And it was on that basis that the district attorney, after looking at the facts and the evidence, decided that the death sentence should not stand, and so he entered into an agreed order. The alternative...
So that's amazing. I mean, they used race. And when you say they used race, what do you mean? That they would strike black jurors? They would say, we don't want black jurors on there? Or how did he use race?
He struck black jurors. He struck 3 black jurors, and on grounds that simply didn't apply, using a rationale that would have equally applied to white jurors that he kept on the jury. Not only that, but a couple of years ago, John Zimmerman gave a presentation to the District Attorney General's Conference, which is a statewide meeting of the district attorneys every year on jury selection. And in that presentation, he talked about how he used race to decide whether to strike jurors or not in his trials. And he advocated for the use of race in striking jurors, which is unconstitutional. And so because of that presentation, we were able to demonstrate what his intentions were and what his state of mind was.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk more about how you can see this film. Take a break. Be back right after this.